host.
Oh, we're ready. We're recording. All right. So, welcome to our fifth virtual volunteer fair. I keep wanting to say fifth annual, but we had a few double up on some years. In 2020, our virtual volunteer fair, as I said earlier, was a way for us to connect our Master Naturalist volunteers with our partners to participate in virtual or distance-based volunteer service programs. And we've continued with these virtual volunteer fairs by request from our Master Naturalists as a way to, again, find new opportunities for partnership, new programs to engage with, and find some volunteer service that can be done during the hot of the summer here in Texas. So as we get started, we're going to, as we always do with any of our webinars, start off with our etiquette. If this is your first WebEx that you've joined with us as a Master Naturalist, hopefully the setup is not too terribly different for you, but as an attendee, you cannot turn your video on and you cannot unmute. That's to give our focus to our project hosts, our speakers today, and make sure that they are using that 15-minute speed dating type session that they have, allotment that they have, to the optimum efficiency. We are using chat today to ask questions, and Michelle and I will be monitoring chat. Judith Green, our MC for today, will be helping to work with our project hosts and getting them set up and staying on time today. That is going to be important. So I kind of skipped over chat etiquette, but hopefully y'all have participated in one of these before. Please chat to everyone, and please use clear questions so that Michelle and I can ask those questions as you intend them to our speakers. And then I mentioned that Judith is going to keep us on time, and we are in a speed dating type timeline today with a very strict schedule. The event is being recorded so that you can go back and watch those segments that you're interested in, that you want to learn more about, and feel free to come in and go on those different projects that are specifically of interest to you today. As we open up our projects, our project hosts will be sharing a series of information about their project, kind of, again, that speed dating formula. They're giving you the elevator speech about their project, and there's a lot more information on their catalog that we'll drop that link in the chat here as well. It's on our virtual volunteer fair page. So they're going to describe their projects, their expectations and outcomes, the logistics, what you as a volunteer would be doing, experience, equipment, training if needed. And then the big question is, what's in it for you as a volunteer to connect with these project hosts, to connect with these volunteer project opportunities, as well as some of the additional logistics like location and contact information. Again, I mentioned that we have a catalog of each of these projects. So we've collected information from the project host to put into a snapshot page with more information, including their contact information. So do not feel like you need to scribble that kind of stuff down throughout the day today. It is all on our website, which is found under the Naturalist News link on our page. You can click there and then scroll. I believe it's the second one now, is our virtual volunteer fair page. And Michelle, will you just go ahead and drop that link in the chat so that it's easy for everybody to access?
Already did.
Perfect. Ahead of the game. Here's where you will find that catalog on the website. So it's under the agenda, and it's a easy PDF for you to download. And it is organized in order of the projects that we're going to go through today. So then what happens next? Michelle, do you want to talk about how to sign up as a volunteer after you find that match today?
So once you find a project or a few projects that you're interested today after either today or tomorrow's sessions, if you're attending both or wanting to attend both, we'll have a SurveyMonkey link that we'll be putting out into the chat. It'll also be on our website, but you'll just go and visit the SurveyMonkey link. It'll have a listing of all the projects that are available. You can add your name to the list there as being a potential volunteer for the project. And then the next thing that happens after that is we're going to be collecting people interested in the projects. We're going to be collecting their names through May 24th. And after May 24th, we'll be downloading that list and then sending it to all of our project hosts, the presenters that will be presenting today. From there, it's in the project's host lap or desk to go through the list and follow up with you, check in with you, provide any additional advanced training that might be needed to further prep you to be part of the project, or vet you as a volunteer for the project. Just know that we have over almost 200 people or more registered for this event over the course of the 2 days. And so there are obviously going to be more volunteers for some projects than others. And that even though you may have interest in a certain a certain project, it may only need 5 volunteers and there's 50 that have signed up for it. So just keep that in mind as you're going through your list and providing your interest, or keep that in the back of your mind. And then we may also do other virtual volunteer fairs in the coming months or years also. So just that's another item to think about too. I know your first question is going to be, how do I log volunteer hours for attending these sessions today? So the distilled points on this is number one, make sure you're signed up to as attending today. And what that means is that you're signed up to report to the virtual volunteer service fair project opportunity in the TMN VMS. The link here, if Mary Pearl, you or Judith, you can drop that quick guide. There are links in the quick guide to the service project to be signed up for. So it's kind of a double sign up process today. One, register, attend the live sessions if you're here live. And then secondly, register in VMS to report to this project for today. We ask that you track time to the nearest quarter hour. So presentations today will be about 15 minutes per presenter, and track time for only those that you watch. So we may have, let's say, 7 presentations today, but you might only watch 3. So you'd be tracking 0.75 hours for that. There are 2 days of this event. So today is one day where we're presenting a certain caveat of projects. Tomorrow is the second day where we have a whole other host of projects being presented. And so the maximum time available is up to 2.5 hours per day if you are if you're watching both days. And then when you report your hours, just remember that your service performed is reviewed, attended project intros at Virtual Volunteer Fair. And then how do you log hours once you start working on projects? I won't go over this in detail because that's a next part of the thing, but there are 2 different types of projects that are being offered today. One is virtual projects. Those are pretty much statewide projects that you can report to. Again, remember to sign up for those in the VMS system. And then the second type of project are place-based projects that are being presented throughout the course of these 2 days. And place-based projects absolutely need to be reviewed and approved by your local chapter to determine whether they are fitting for your local area and training. So just keep those 2 things in mind. We have just some quick links to our community science guide, and there it goes. Our community science guide, and how it's basically how to log service hours for community science apps like iNaturalist. And the quick and dirty guide for today is we've done most of the work for you on some of these community science projects that are being presented. in that if they're being presented, they fit most of our criteria, and there are some projects that will need to be pre-reviewed and approved at your local chapter, depending on the location. So our quick guide tells you that. The program tells you that, and we'll try to mention it as some of these are being presented also.
And I realized that the community science guide link that I just dropped in the chat was the wrong one, so I apologize about that. I think I doubled it up, so I will get that fixed here in just a second.
Okay, next slide.
There we go.
And
so,
yeah,
go ahead, Michelle.
Well, actually, I was going to turn it over to Judith if she wanted to see the agenda for today.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that we do have 2 days worth, obviously, as Michelle said, of presenters. Each presentation will be on time. So if for some reason you need to bow out and you want to come back later and see another presentation, feel free to come back at that exact time, because we are going to try and stick to the schedule noted below, or what you see on the screen. And if for some reason the presenter does end early, we will wait until the time for the next speaker to start at the exact time noted. And then I will also jump in around the 1 minute mark at the end, or at the 9 minute mark, I should say, of each presentation, excuse me, the 14th minute mark of each presentation, just to let the speaker know they have about 1 minute left. So I'll try to jump in when I feel like it can without interrupting them. So each presenter will get a 1 minute warning before they are scheduled to come to an end with their presentation, or their time is up. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We hope to have a virtual volunteer fair today. Was there anything else, Michelle, that you need me to cover?
That's tomorrow's. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, we're just kind of showing you right now the agenda. So
Oh.
what was on the screen just here a minute ago was the today's, and then just there was a quick view of tomorrow's agenda.
And the thing to keep in mind, I think Mary Pearl already mentioned it, but the agenda is actually the guide to the project list. So they are in the same order throughout, and then each project does have the contact person's name and email address at the very top of each project title, and just beneath the project title.
All right. Well, with that, Judith, do you want me to get our first speaker up and running?
Well,
that sounds
real
good.
quick, as you're doing that, we have some new features to our presentations that we do, especially those of us in Parks and Wildlife. So if you, and this can be done anytime, if you can help support future events like this by taking our voluntary survey, I'm gonna paste a link in the chat right now. You just have to take this once if you're interested, and let us know. Let us know if you have any questions. And then,
All right.
Judith, go ahead and.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Our first speaker, Irmi Willcockson, is going to be talking on her project about butterfly monitoring. She is the president of the Gulf Coast chapter and also the co-chair of the Texas Butterfly Monitoring Network. So Irmi, go ahead and if you'd like to go ahead and upload your presentation and share your screen with us.
All right, let's try this. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, fantastic. Let me go ahead and share screen.
It is starting to share, and you're up. You just need to go into presentation mode.
Done.
Awesome. We can see you and we can hear you.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you today briefly about butterfly monitoring. So first of all, butterflies occur in all habitats of Texas, which means that anyone can do this. And monitoring the occurrence and abundance of butterflies in different areas informs conservation efforts by landowners. It also informs global science, as I'll show a little bit later. We've had several data requests for our set from people from around the world who are looking at butterflies and related organisms and wanted to use our data for their projects. Butterfly monitoring involves traveling over a predetermined route 8 to 10 times per year to count and try to identify the adult butterflies using each habitat. So the project outcomes for conservation is that data is usable by multiple stakeholders to improve butterfly habitat. So for example, if you're monitoring a property that is held, such as a state park, held by the state of Texas, then state park managers can use that data to improve butterfly habitat. Since 2021, we've had 3 international projects that have requested Texas data as part of their data set, looking at different aspects of butterfly conservation. Project logistics. I put in here 50 volunteers. Really, I don't have a limit on the number of volunteers that can do this. As a matter of fact, being such a large state, we have relatively few people monitoring butterflies. Each volunteer traverses their route 8 to 10 times per year, taking between 30 minutes and 2 hours each time. The wonderful thing about this is that any natural location close to the volunteer's home base, whether that be their work, their home, or their vacation home, is useful. In general, I recommend to monitor twice a month, March through November, depending on location. So the closer you are to the Gulf Coast, the longer the monitoring season is. I begin monitoring around February and monitor through early December, whereas clearly someone living in the Panhandle would not monitor nearly that many months. I expect that the volunteer commitment is around 12 hours per year, and monitoring should be split about evenly throughout the warm month being defined as the daytime temperature above 60, overnight temperatures 50 or above, so that butterflies are active. Roughly 2 hours per month, entirely performed on the volunteer's schedule. This is an ongoing project that does not have an end date. So what do you need to monitor butterflies? A butterfly guide appropriate to your area. A camera is helpful. A phone is perfectly fine. A clipboard and a pen. We still record data on paper initially and then enter it into a database. Advanced training is split into 2 different parts. Approximately an hour's worth of advanced training, watching PowerPoints and reading program materials on the volunteer's own time. And then to make sure that we touch base together, I schedule various sessions of a half-hour live virtual meetings to discuss the material, answer any questions that may arise, and then, of course, help you with setting up your route, any questions on the monitoring once you begin monitoring. So why monitor butterflies? Well, you can do it by yourself, or you can do it with at most one partner. You get to stay home in bad weather, because butterflies don't fly when it's raining or too windy. You walk or roll at a slow pace, only bending down to take pictures, so it is relatively less physically taxing. The route, the day, and time of day is up to you. It can fit your schedule, given the fact that butterflies are generally most active between 10 and 4. During the more temperate times of the year, I do go out between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. When it gets really hot out, butterflies are not that active during the heat of the day either, so going out a little earlier or staying out a little later is certainly appropriate. You'll learn to identify common and not so common species. Despite having monitored my routes now for several years, I still see butterflies occasionally that I have not seen on that route before, and sometimes even butterflies I've never seen before. And you'll be surprised when you see a species you've not seen before. In general, once you start looking, once you start attuning your eyes and your senses to the presence of butterflies, you'll see far more butterflies than you even thought were living in that habitat. Now, how does this butterfly monitoring connect to our mission? As Texas Master Naturalists, part of our mission is to provide service dedicated to the beneficial management of natural resources and natural areas within our communities for the state of Texas. So this applies to everyone, and it directly speaks to beneficial management. All right, I included deliberately this picture that is quite blurry, because sometimes people say, well, I need to have this perfect picture. And I go, no, you don't. iNaturalist, I would be happy to identify that butterfly for you, given that quality of image. As a matter of fact, images for butterfly monitoring are not required. I only take pictures if it's something I can't identify and want to see if I can put it into iNaturalist or, talk to someone about it. Or if it's something I've not seen there before on that particular route, just to give a record of that. So photography skills are not required. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that everyone understands that while most of the time when we talk about a route for butterfly monitoring, we're talking about walking. Walking is not required. If you use a mobility device and you have an accessible route, that is wonderful, and you are welcome to monitor butterflies. Because again, you're not required to bend down and, get close to the ground in any way. Your job really is to look out and find and identify the butterflies that are using a particular habitat. All right, I'll open this up to any questions.
Thank you so much, Irmi. I really appreciate that really great overview of your project. If you have any questions, please make sure to type it into the chat, and Michelle and Mary Pro will let us know what those questions are. In the meantime, you did kind of mention it. You kind of alluded, until we get any questions, I'm going to ask one. You did allude to the fact that a butterfly guide was needed, and you also kind of mentioned using iNaturalist, so that kind of answered the question. So I'm assuming volunteers can use both, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the other thing to note is that it is better to be accurate than precise. So especially in the beginning of the year, I have lots of entries that are unknown butterfly, unknown species, unknown sulfur, because sometimes you can't tell. It's better to do that than to guess. And so, yes, a combination of butterfly guides and iNaturalist works well.
Okay. Jean is asking if cultivated gardens can be on the route.
Absolutely.
Okay. And how big should a route be, is what Diane would like to know.
So the idea is that it takes you between 30 minutes and 2 hours to traverse. So it depends, and you're walking slowly. So most routes are around 1, no more than 2 miles.
Okay.
And that have come in, do you type the number of butterflies or just the species?
Absolutely. We account for both species and abundance. So the way I do it is I make tally marks on my paper, for example, common buckeye, and I just tally the number of butterflies I see in a particular habitat.
I think Michael's question was answered earlier when you answered Jean's, but Rose's question is a great one. She asks, are you looking for people for 2023, given that the monitoring starts in February, March? Or when would your volunteer needs start?
Starting can be done anytime, so I expect to do training to contact volunteers shortly after I receive that list, and then to do training in June and have people begin monitoring in June or at the latest early July. There is no defined start time. We do not have to wait until 2024 to get the routes going. Anything else?
So there's one more one question that Irmi, you don't necessarily have to answer, but so if interested, the question from Liz, if interested, do you want us to contact? And so Liz, if you missed the intro, we will be dropping a survey monkey link for you. If you are interested in signing up for any of the presentations today, you can use that link to sign up. And if you have additional questions for Irmi, Irmi did show her contact information. So if you have more questions prior to signing up for helping on this project, you can contact Irmi.
Thank you so much, Irmi. I believe that is all of the questions for right now. If you do have further questions, feel free to continue writing them in the chat. And if Irmi is going to be around, she can answer them. If not, Irmi, if you need to go, then hopefully they can contact you directly for those questions.
Thank you.
All right, so we still have a little bit of time. We have about 3 minutes. So we are going to wait until 9:30 to start for the next presenter. And Samantha, if you are there, I think that's you. Feel free to go ahead and share your presentation. You can go ahead and line it up for us. Okay, your presentation is up, and we will go ahead and wait 2 more minutes before we get started, and then I'll introduce you at that time. Do you want to do a quick audio check? Just make sure.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
So we have about a minute and a half. If anybody needs to grab a cup of coffee, feel free to do so real quickly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here in a few seconds. So feel free to join us back. If you grab that cup of coffee, head on back, and we are going to introduce Miss Samantha Brewer. She is the Network Volunteer Engagement Coordinator with the USA National Phenology, and her project title is Time to Restore, Connecting People, Plants, and Pollinators. And so, Samantha, feel free to go ahead and get started at your leisure.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you all for having me here today. I'm excited to be here and share our project with you. Yes, my name is Samantha Brewer. I'm the Volunteer Engagement Coordinator for the USA National Phenology Network. And I'm here to talk about our Time to Restore project that you can participate in. Oh, if I can get the thing to click. Hold on. Oh, no. Let's see.
Samantha, there are arrows at the bottom of your PowerPoint
I've got it
screen.
now. Yeah, there we go. I found it. I've got two screens, so sometimes when I share, I get a little lost. But that's all right. So once again, our project that I'm here to mention to you guys is our Time to Restore project. And the aim for this project is to be connecting people, plants, and pollinators together. And the main purpose for this project is pollinator restoration. So we're bringing back habitat that will provide nectar for migrating pollinators and also seeds, which also provide food for many wildlife available. But the purpose for knowing when some of these pollinating plants have seeds is so that seeds can be collected and distributed in native habitat to bring more habitat available for pollinators. But there's many challenges to this, right? So whenever you're restoring an ecosystem or bringing an ecosystem back to historic conditions, you have to think about things like what species do we need to be planting? How are these species going to be responding to changes in climate, especially if you're trying to restore historic habitat and bringing it back to what it used to be? The world has changed since then, and how are the plants going to respond to that? And then what's the timing of the flowering and seeding that what is the timing of the flowering and seeding for these critical nectar plants for pollinators either migrating through a habitat or who are residents of a particular habitat. And so as a volunteer, if you would like to participate in this project, what you're going to be doing is following the flowering and seed timing for one or more nectar plants throughout the year. And it's really cool as you'll really eventually become an expert in understanding the life cycle changes of the species that you're tracking. What's really cool about this project as well is when you're out there collecting data on these different pollinations or these different plant species, you're going to be directly supporting data collection that's going to help conserve plants and pollinators, especially kind of in the southeastern area of the United States. So what do we expect to learn from this project? For one, understanding bloom times and when to harvest seeds for important pollinator plants, right? So when you're thinking about pollinators, these animals are coming to collect nectar from certain flower species. And as they collect nectar, pollen attaches to them. And so then when they go to flower, they're able to pollinate those flowers, which helps with the plant reproduction, right? But if you don't have flowers blooming, you don't have nectar available for those pollinators. So we're trying to see when are these plants blooming when we're doing restoration, because you can time the plants that you're putting into some of these areas to make sure that there's nectar availability for pollinators during critical times when they're going to be in those areas. It's also going to help researchers understand the relationship between climate variables like temperature and precipitation and how that affects flowering and seed timing. So when you're collecting data on the plants, that data actually gets connected to climate data so we can better understand the relationships between the timing of flowering and fruiting and climatic factors as well. And researchers will use this knowledge to understand how future climate changes will impact flowering and seed timing of these plants. So if we know if at the locations that you're observing these flowers, we have that information tied to climate data, we can look at the climate data of where they're trying to restore habitat. And you can determine then how the flowers are going to react to that climate where you're trying to plant them. And then these changes can be used to create climate-informed guidance then for those working on pollinator restoration. So if we just go out there assuming, right, we're trying to restore pollinator habitat, if you just make assumptions about what flowers are going to work, when they're going to be flowering, and you just put seeds out there, if you don't have the data to back up what decisions you're making, you can make decisions that seem on the surface to be common sense or logical, but it doesn't actually match with what the data is showing. So having that data showing when these flowers are flowering, when these flowers are producing seeds, and what climate variables are affecting when they're flowering or seeding, if you don't have that hard data, you can't make informed decisions. So for this project, this volunteer project can be kind of done completely independently. So any number of volunteers are welcome, and certainly the more the merrier, right? The more diversity we have of volunteers looking at these flowers, the more knowledge we're going to get about how these flowers are responding to their climate in different parts of the southeastern United States. To collect this data on the plants, you can use one of two kind of phenology or two citizen science programs that look at phenology, or what phenology is the study of the seasonal changes of plants and animals. And you can use one program, which is Nature's Notebook. So that's the program of the USA National Phenology Network that I work for. But you can also use iNaturalist. iNaturalist is another really wonderful way of being able to collect data on seasonal changes of plants and animals. What you can do then is create your own site with the target species, and I'll mention in a moment what those target species are. But your research site can be your backyard, your front yard, it can be a park that you go take walks in, or it can be along one of your favorite hiking trails. What's wonderful about these programs is when you're collecting data on the seasonal timing of these plants, you're not doing anything to impact the area where those plants are. You're simply observing what those plants are doing in nature. So you're saying, are there flowers open on these plants? Are there flower buds? Have any of these flowers been pollinated? Do you see early fruits, or do you see ripe fruits? And when would those fruits with seeds be available for collecting for restoration projects? You monitor during periods of peak activity, so you don't have to worry as much during the winter time. There are some flowering plants in the winter, but whatever species you are wanting to monitor, you can monitor during periods of peak activity. And that information that we're really looking for is the timing of the flowering and the seeding of these flowers. And the time commitment is flexible. If you can record data for a few minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, you'll really capture the start and end of these important life stages. So if you're out there and you're like, okay, I know I've got some purple cone flowers, they've got some flower buds, but we want to see when they're open for time to gather pollinators, you can go out and you'll say like, no, I don't see open flowers yet. No, I don't see open flowers. Now I see open flowers. So you're capturing when those flowers are opening and then the climate data that's attached to them so that we can make those connections. How much training or experience are required? Well, just being able to identify the wildflower species you're tracking. Some of our species that we're really focusing on are wild bergamot, cardinal flower, green antelope horn, common sunflower, eastern purple coneflower, buttonbrush, showy milkweed, and tall blazing star. So these are some really common flowers that you might find in your area. These are also common flowers that you could plant in your yard so that you can create pollinator habitat yourself and collect data for scientists to use so that they can also restore habitats. To learn how to use our program, Nature's Notebook has an online free observer certification course that will train you how to use Nature's Notebook and how to observe those seasonal changes. iNaturalist also has a brief training program, and iNaturalist also has a great app called Seek that you can use to identify different flowers that you might want to track as well. And the benefits for being able to participate in this program is, for one, you have really flexible hours, right? So if you go outside, have your morning coffee, if you're tracking plants in your backyard, you can go outside, have your coffee, and observe like, oh, do I see flowers? Do I see fruits? What am I observing on the flowers in my yard today? You can collect data as an individual, so you can do this completely on your own, but you can also create a group site, so you can actually make a site, like maybe it's in a public park, you can bring your friends together and you can collect data together. So if you have 3 people who can all go out once a week, each of you guys can schedule like, okay, who's going to go out Monday, who's going to go out Wednesday, who's going to go out Friday, so that you have continuous data collection on the same plants, even though it's not necessarily the same person. You can also make connections with the plants and pollinators near you. What I really love about this program is I used to be all about birds. I only did birds. Plants were just kind of things that birds lived on and birds ate from. But ever since I started collecting data with Nature's Notebook, I've really gotten to know the plants in my area and see the little changes that they make throughout the year. And it's just been really rewarding that I can actually go outside, slow down for a bit, and really stop and make observations of the plants around me. And I want for you guys to have the opportunity to be able to make those connections as well. And also developing skills in species and life stage identification. It's so easy for me to be like, oh, here's open flowers, but some plants, it can be a little vague when those flowers are open. So really getting a chance to look closely at those plants and really observing those life stages can be really, really rewarding. And so for the Time to Restore project, we're expecting that project to wrap up in around 2023, but that's not the only project available with Nature's Notebook. We also have a pollen trackers campaign where you can look up, where you can observe certain plants that are particular allergens that cause people allergies. We've been seeing conditions where spring is occurring earlier than usual, which can increase the allergy season. So we're trying to look at the relationship between pollen in the air and when the flowers are open. And then we also have a nectar connectors campaign, which is looking at pollen or nectar availability for migrating species all across the United States. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me or for my coworker, Erin. Erin's actually been kind of like one of our main helpers in kind of developing and working on this Time to Restore project, her and Alyssa also with the USA NPN. And we've just had a lot of collaborators with all sorts of different organizations to make this project happen. And so we can say like, here's our organized collaborators, but also just volunteers across the area who are collecting these data. It wouldn't be possible without volunteers. So we really, really appreciate these efforts. If you would like more information, this is the time where you can bring up your phone camera and scan that QR code. And that will bring you to our Time to Restore page where you can learn more about this project. You can check out our webinars and meetings. We have quarterly meetings as well where people can get together, talk about this project, and learn more about how you can help. With that, thank you so much for listening. And I'll take time for questions now.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I appreciate all that great information. One comment by Liz is that doing this in one's backyard is allowed, if doing this in one's backyard is allowed by the state for master naturalists, then that's actually quite wonderful because a lot of activities you typically aren't allowed, you're not allowed to do that. So that's wonderful. And then Anne Marie was asking if the list was available for printing.
Yes. So actually that website there, so if you go to, oh, I should have put the website on there, right? But if you go to naturesnotebook.org, you can look up our different campaigns. And yes, there we actually have printed lists for these plants, and especially ones that aren't necessarily in color. And we actually have pre-made PDFs as well that you can print out a flyer if you want to share it with others. All that information is available on there as well. And I did see a thing pop up. Is it okay for non-master naturalists? Absolutely. I'm here in Arizona. My master naturalist keeps saying, you need to do our program. And I'm going to actually join one of the cohorts finally. But anybody is able to participate in these programs.
Including non-master naturalists?
Including non-master naturalists, yep. But the time that you put in for making these observations do count towards your hours, if you are.
And Michelle did post in the chat, unfortunately, if you're doing this in your backyard, then it cannot be counted as volunteer service. But if you're doing it anywhere else, then it can be. So sorry about that, Liz.
I'm sorry about that too. I wasn't used to that for the Texas.
That's quite
yes.
all right. No worries. But still, I mean, still good information that you want to collect. And I did have one question since I don't see any additional ones for anyone else. If you did keep a garden, let's say, and you're not using it as master naturalist hours, but you're just wanting to do it to support the project in general. If you kept a garden, would it have advantages because of the fact that it's being watered potentially? Would that change potentially any of the outcome data versus a natural area, that plants in a natural area that typically are, having to struggle with drought because they're not being maintained?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe with iNaturalist, it's more of the focus on the natural areas. With Nature's Notebook, though, when you create your essentially your own personal study site, you can actually put in there that you are watering your plants, and scientists can filter and tease apart that data because some scientists do want to compare what the plants are doing in a maintained versus more natural area. So you do have that option to include that in your data so that the scientists know what's going on with the plants.
Okay. And there's another question from Myra in the chat that I think I'm going to let Michelle answer. So, all right. Well, thank you again. If we don't have any additional questions, we are going to start in about 1 minute with our next speaker. So thank you again, Samantha, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you'd like to go ahead and, there you go, start sharing. Awesome, thank you. All right, so our next presentation is going to be a project titled Armchair Botanist, mapping the plants of Texas. And it's going, the presenter today is going to be Ashley Bordelon and Tiana Raymond. I don't know, is Diego joining us this morning, ladies? No? Okay, just the two of you. And you're welcome to unmute yourselves. We just want to make sure that we can also hear you, so feel free to unmute yourself and respond in that manner.
All right, can y'all hear us?
And yes, and both of these, this is with the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, so feel free to get started.
All right, super. Somehow I have lost our PowerPoint screen, so
I do see your presentation, but it's not in presentation mode yet.
how about now? Oh, good.
Yes, now it is.
All right. Hold on, let's move that over there. All right. Let's make that big. All right, perfect. Can y'all, excuse me, y'all can see my screen and you can hear me?
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Wonderful. I have two screens as well, and I may be looking at content on the right-hand screen over here. So if I'm not staring at y'all, I apologize. That's why. I'm here with Ashley Bordelon. My name is Tiana Raymond. I'm the director of the Herbarium here at the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, which is at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden.
And I'm Ashley Bordelon. I'm the Herbarium Collections Manager.
And you're not hearing from Diego Barroso today, but Diego Barroso is the project manager for the larger project that we're going to be, that today's presentation fits into. So our presentation today is the Armchair Botanist, Community Scientist Transcribing Collections, but now mapping the plants of Texas. So we might be a bit familiar to y'all. There we go. We might be a bit familiar to you because thank you to Mary Pearl, Michelle, and Dude. We've been here before presenting a project to transcribe specimen labels. So on your screen right now, y'all are looking at a photograph of one of our specimens. I'm sure you can recognize that one. And the first part of our project of digitizing nearly 2 million herbarium specimens across Texas and Oklahoma. The first part of our project after imaging was to take all the information that exists on these labels that go back hundreds of years and to transcribe those data into a database. Thanks to your efforts and other community scientists, we've been able to do that for a lot of that already. But now we're getting into the next stage of this. This all fits into a National Science Foundation project that was funded in 2019. And in that proposal, we actually argued for the inclusion of plant enthusiast chapters. I think that's how we called it, or enthusiast groups, because, well, I'll tell you in a minute why we did that. But so what we're on the stage of doing now is we have all these data about where these specimens were collected, where in Texas. Even though this is Texas and Oklahoma, the project I'm presenting today is only for Texas material. So it does apply for y'all. But what we're doing today is we're trying to attach geo-coordinates to the locations that are listed on specimen labels. And we think it's going to be somewhere around 1 million specimens that require that activity to happen. This is volunteer effort. This is staff effort. There's all hands on deck for this project. Our major outcome for this is the third item that's listed on this screen. We hope that with your help, we will have accurate and reliable mapped data for about 1.4 million specimens collected in Texas, and that these data are publicly available for research and education. There's a URL listed there at the bottom. This is where, if y'all have participated in our Armchair Botany before, this is where all those records get placed. So if they're not there yet, they'll soon be. But I actually wrote up a little bit, you see the first two. Well, let me explain what's on the screen in the photographs that you're seeing. That first photograph that has a herbarium of the University of Texas at Arlington. This is a herbarium that now exists here at Britt, and it's a specimen that was collected in 1973. You can see that this specimen doesn't have geocoordinates, which means I can't automatically place it on a map. These descriptions are actually really good. You could probably get a pretty accurate point on a map with some sort of an uncertainty on the map about where this location is. But since our specimen go back to the 1800s, you can see that there'll be less information, there'll be more requirement to do research into political changes and boundaries of places. So there'll be lots of opportunity for an individual to do their own self-study to help interpret the textual information about location that is seen on these labels. Our argument in the proposal, and I'm reading a bit of this from our abstract submission because I think it was great the way I stated it. But Texas Master Naturalists have a specialized understanding of their local environments and the history and geography of their areas. When presented with limited information, Texas Master Naturalists have the ability to engage in personal research to fill any gaps in their knowledge of an area or habitat, location, geography. These special traits mean that Texas Master Naturalists are uniquely suited to providing the most accurate and researched efforts to apply geocoordinates to textual descriptions that may describe locations from over 100 years ago. Texas Master Naturalists understand the need to document the process. So this is part of the volunteer task, but understand the need to document the process and can be trusted to describe the assumptions they have made when we're signing geocoordinates. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. So here are the logistics. We expect to actively start moving to georeference our specimens this summer. It is an activity that can be virtual and remote, can be done from anywhere at any time of the day or night because it's all done online, or it can be done in person. We have the facilities here that if you are in Fort Worth and are available Monday through Friday during typical business hours, it's an activity you can come on site to do. The prerequisites, or before we actually start georeferencing, and I'm sorry, that's the term I'm using for applying coordinates to locality text locations, is georeferencing. Before we get to georeferencing, we will be contacting you with a volunteer questionnaire asking about your interests and abilities. This will include, if you are particularly well-versed in Comal County and its history, or if you are particularly interested in a botanist and have some knowledge you'd like to bring to the table, Lindheimer, Albert Ruth, Revershawn. So there is some self-study that will be involved. We'll also be holding virtual and in-person trainings. Ashley leads all of those. And then most importantly, we will be asking all our volunteers to take a test data set and try to map the locations on there just so we can be consistent about accuracy. So one of the cool things about this project is we're presenting today from Britt, but this project encompasses many different institutions across our two-state region. So many institutions will be pooling their specimen data into a database, and those records will be available for Texas Master Naturalists to georeference Texas collections. After the training and testing happens and that's passed, we will have assignments to volunteers of counties or special interests, maybe a collector, and they'll be expected to research and assign coordinates. And there'll be some back and forth. So this is not necessarily done in a vacuum. There will be perhaps a cohort of a few people working on a county. So there will be an expectation to be in communication. Time commitment, really whatever you're willing to give to this project, as many hours as you like. The only thing will be if you have said Comal County is the county that I'm interested, if there is a group of people working on that county, they may finish those records before you get to them. So there's a little bit of that. It probably takes 5, is that accurate, Ashley? Would you say
so? Yeah.
So 5 to 45 minutes to georeference a single record. And this is because it may be something as explicit as that record y'all saw from the University of Arlington, which gave a street address and also directions from an intersection. Or it may be something that says on this trail in this national forest, and you may have to look up maps to find maps that show that trail, or maps that go back in time that show a trail that no longer exists. So it can be very time consuming. Who can do this? Master naturalists, but this is open to non-master naturalists. So all community scientists passing the accuracy test. So you'll notice that there I put number of volunteers, I put 254 for the number of counties in Texas. Expectation of when this project will end. Georeferencing is a time-consuming activity. We expect it will take more than a couple years, but we hope to get a big chunk of it done in the next 2 years.
So this is kind of an example of one record in the program that you'll be georeferencing in. It's called geolocate. So you can see there's a highlighted bit at the bottom, 1.7 miles southwest of Newsom in Camp County. So you can see this program gives you a possible location based on that locality string, and you can edit it from there. You can make that radius bigger or smaller. So this is kind of just to give you an example of what you'll be working with. So in addition to kind of those trainings, having a second screen can be useful, especially if you're having to do a little bit of side research and going down a few rabbit holes. And again, especially if you have experience or interest in particular places or with particular collectors. If you're great at learning new software, this may come a little bit easier to you, but of course, like we will give the best training that we can. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it's super easy. And again, we'll be doing a questionnaire, and we'll have instructions and a place for volunteers to continually go to for frequently asked questions. And we'll have ongoing training in virtual / in-person office hours, which is great. So I will personally always be available, even outside of my typical work hours, to help out. Yes. And then benefits for you and us. This will definitely improve the knowledge of floristic exploration in your area by pulling together all of these parts that you may be researching down the side. Learning how about geodata and practicing using mapping techniques. So if you love maps already, this is a great way, and this is really kind of going into the future, not just botany, but a lot of different areas are using georeferencing. Learning the history of your area, improving your understanding of where it is today. A lot of these areas you'll notice from these specimens, a park or an area, a field, a prairie may not exist anymore. There may be a parking lot where a prairie used to exist. So it's interesting to see historical maps and comparing them to what it is like today. And again, we have monthly Armchair Botanist forums. I'm sure plenty of you join us for these already for our transcriptions activities, but we'll be including georeferencing into these forums. But not only is it a place for us to meet and communicate and ask questions about these projects, but it's also a way for us to give back to you with some of our knowledge on a number of topics. So plant ID, nomenclature, general Texas history and geography, botanical collecting and history, and we'll also occasionally have guest speakers hop on as well. So thank you. You guys have already helped us. I can't remember how many thousands of specimens, but many, many thousands have been transcribed by you guys. So we're excited for this next step in the project. And there's our email if you need, stop sharing. I'm sorry.
Just go ahead and put it in the chat if you can. Thank you so much, Tiana and Ashley. I appreciate that. We do still have a little bit more time for questions, so I don't know if we lost you.
No, thank you.
Okay, you're still there. Awesome.
I thought
okay.
we were almost up on time, so I was speeding through the end.
No worries. There is one question, just for clarity. You don't have to necessarily do this in the county that you live in. You can do it in neighboring counties as well, correct?
Correct.
Any places you've lived in prior, or you just happen to know?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then Anne Marie was asking, is there a website for this one?
So we will have a website that will kind of have all of the FAQs and more information. There's not anything there yet, but I will type it in the chat right now.
And we should say that one of the reasons we don't have a web page yet is because there are so many institutions pooling their records into one place, which is why the training has to be rather rigorous, because all of us have to agree on what that protocol is. So that will be launched, though, obviously before this gets started.
And I'm just making sure that I wasn't typing in the wrong one. I will be putting it in the chat.
And Michelle or Mary Pearl can maybe answer this, but one of the questions was, will the hours that they put towards this be considered volunteer or advanced training hours? The monthly meetings that you hold.
I can't remember how Master Naturalists have considered those in the past. If it is advanced training or not.
It would depend on what you're covering in those monthly meetings. Are you providing extra training for the project, or Is it like a check-in meeting? So if you're providing training, it'd be advanced training. But if you're like checking in on the project, it'd be more in the service area. So it's really defined by what your agenda is for those meetings.
Sounds good, Michelle. And typically those meetings are 30 to 45 minutes of content presentation and discussion, and then about 15 minutes.
Yeah, it'll always start with anyone opening the floor to anybody with questions about the project. So it kind of just depends. Sometimes we will discuss more specific project details and learning a little bit more about that. But then we also want to provide more of like a presentation and an opportunity to learn something outside of the project as well.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies. We really appreciate it. If you will check the chat, there's one more question from Kristen, if you can answer that one in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our next presentation by Taylor Keys, who is the program director, Texan by Nature. And Taylor, if you are there, hi, Taylor. If you would just go ahead and share your screen and we'll get you uploaded.
Perfect.
There was a button at the bottom that should allow you to share your screen.
Yeah.
You have to move your cursor over the area just to get it to populate the key bar or the bar. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, I am. Apologies.
Okay.
I think that's my whole screen, but let me just make
It's
this
coming up. Yes, it's already in presentation mode.
Okay,
So
perfect.
Taylor, by all means, feel free to get started when you're ready.
Perfect. Well, howdy, everyone. Thank you for having me. Excited to present our volunteer opportunity to y'all this morning, which is capturing conservation, researching conservation organizations, projects, and issues by Texas ecoregion. My coworker Karina will be presenting something in a similar vein tomorrow, but more of a marketing and social media slant. Just for a little bit of background on this project and Texan Nature, we exist to advance conservation, and we do this by acting as a strategic partner to business and as an accelerator for conservation organizations in Texas. So to date, there are over 140 conservation organizations in our network, and that's always growing, but we know that there are still organizations and projects out there that could benefit from all of the free support and resources that we provide through our programs and statewide initiatives. So through this project, looking to hopefully gain some volunteers that could just help us and by using their existing knowledge base and connections to research not only conservation organizations across the state that operate in their ecoregion, but conservation projects that benefit natural resources and really just helping us be aware of conservation issues in all of the ecoregions across Texas. This project would allow us to more deeply scan the state by ecoregion, collect necessary information, and conduct outreach, plug more people into our network, and advance and recognize meaningful conservation organizations and projects in Texas. And being aware of these top of mind issues by ecoregion would also just help us identify gaps and areas where project support may be needed. And these are areas where we can plug in our existing partners and just bring awareness to those issues and those organizations that operate statewide. So being knowledgeable about what's going on across the state is very beneficial for a statewide organization. And like most nonprofits, we have a pretty small staff, so hard to be knowledgeable about everything going on in Texas. So that's why we'll gain some volunteers from this to help us out. Just for a little visual, this is our role in Texas. So across communities, conservation industry, we support on these key areas. As far as the project goes, and the outcomes, we're, as mentioned, looking to advance conservation efforts that benefit people, prosperity, and natural resources across Texas. So looking to increase awareness of the most critical conservation issues for each Texas ecoregion. And from that, we'll work on targeted outreach to create new partnerships, accelerate projects, and activate new investments in conservation through our programs and network. So plugging folks into our Texas Water Action Collaborative initiative for project matching to increase funding, plugging organizations into our Conservation Wrangler program where we provide 18 months of tailored strategic support and things like that. As far as project logistics go, this is completely remote, looking for 2 to 4 naturalists per ecoregion, so around 30 total, plus or minus. We'll provide the framework and template for y'all to capture the information in, so it'll be super easy to do that. We're just really looking for your knowledge and research skills, and we're just ready to start when folks are ready, and the time commitment is completely flexible and just dependent on availability, so this can be done at any time. And, you know, just suggesting a minimum of 1 to 2 hours of research per week. And looking to complete the project in a year or less. I know that y'all are super knowledgeable about, the ecoregion that you're in, so may be completed a lot quicker. And to give a visual of what the framework looks like, so this is what it'll look like for capturing conservation organizations and projects. So just looking for the organization name, a website if applicable, a description, what ecoregion the org or project is located in, and then a little bit of information about what the focus area of the organization is. Do they focus on working with landowners, lands, water, wildlife, all of that good stuff. As far as capturing conservation concerns and issues go, we do have a sheet for that as well. So just looking at each of the ecoregions and trying to capture those concerns by what type of concern they are, lands, water, wildlife, you name it, and just interesting facts about those ecoregions as well. Project experience and equipment, advanced training needed. No advanced training needed, only equipment needed is a computer. And no previous training needed beyond just online research skills and proficient use of Google Sheets. If you haven't used Google Sheets, it's very similar to Excel, and we'll just share a link for that where people can enter in the information that they research. Benefits for you. So for this project, you'll gain knowledge about conservation, including organizations, projects, and issues in the ecoregion that you call home. So you may be aware of some, but hopefully, researching this work, you'll become aware of others as well. You'll gain research and analytical skills just by seeking qualitative and quantitative information about these things and analyzing for trends and themes, and really trying to boil down the information you find online to key points. And then you may discover new opportunities through just researching organizations and projects, not only the ones that you research, but seeing the ones that other folks are researching as well. And you'll help uplift your local communities by, researching this information, which will allow us to plug those organizations and projects into our networks and resources. So here's my contact information, and that is it from my end.
Thank you so much, Taylor. I appreciate that. Let's see, I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So I did have one question for you. Could you explain the ecoregion ask a little bit better or a little bit more?
Yeah, so the ecoregion is just the 11 gold ecoregions defined by Texas Parks and Wildlife. So yeah.
So what kind of information are you wanting volunteers to look for regarding the ecoregions? Are you trying to or were you just implying that
we're just dividing the research up by ecoregion
okay,
to make it a little bit easier. So
essentially the volunteers will use a particular ecoregion to look for those various chapters and or groups.
Yep. Yeah. So that would just be the defining boundary. Yeah, it would be those 11 ecoregions. So they would look for organizations, projects, and support just defining conservation issues and concerns for the 11 ecoregions.
Okay, thank you. And then Lisa
asked a question in the chat. Judith, you can't do it all. You have to let us help you ask these questions sometimes. Lisa asked that it looks like this is a database development project. Can you describe the online search task a little bit more specifically?
Yeah, so this will be, as far as database development, it'll be internal as a starting point, having discussions, may have discussions internally if we, make it more publicly available. And as far as online search goes, I envision that it would just be, Googling for the most part. So, and just looking at, articles that come up, organizations that come up, looking through conservation organizations that operate in the Piney Woods or, the Panhandle or West Texas, and just trying to filter through those. And we'll provide the list of the folks that we're already partners with. So we're just trying to narrow down, who we aren't connected with yet and whatnot, and just trying to gather that information, contact information specifically for some of those orgs so we can connect with them and plug them in. Yes, correct, Lisa.
It's actually really great information, just because I think a lot of times, there are other organizations that are doing really great work, and unfortunately, you can work together to kind of get things done. And when you know what your local partner groups are and who they are and what they're asking, sometimes you can work together on various things too. So that will definitely be very helpful information, I think.
Yeah, and
Not everybody advertises themselves well.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll reduce reinventing the wheel, because there's a lot of that happens sometimes. And back when we started doing, we were founded back in 2011, but I think back in 2017 we tried to make an estimate of how many conservation organizations were operating in Texas, and at that time it was around, we're like, okay, 150, that's what we could find, but we're at 140 partners and we just keep hearing of more. So I think in regards to just, this will help develop that baseline too, to understand like how many conservation organizations are operating in Texas, because we don't really know. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taylor.
Another great question came in to talk about the next steps after you have that list. So what resources do you offer now or maybe in the future to organizations that get connected through this?
Yeah, great question. So for organizations, we do have our conservation partner network, and through that program, we provide lots of free resources on fundraising, development, social media marketing, strategic planning. We do a monthly media roundup where organizations can submit their events, and we pitch those to calendar listings across the state to try to get more eyeballs on those events and folks at those events as well. So also resources on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we host quarterly partner meetings and trainings. So at a high level, just lots of free resources based on what conservation NGOs in Texas need. And then we do have programs outside of our conservation partner network that either provide recognition of ongoing conservation projects just as best practices for others to learn from and recreate. We have the Texas Water Action Collaborative. So for organizations that have water projects that need funding, we match those to corporate funders in Texas. And then we have a incubator type program or accelerator program called Conservation Wrangler, where folks apply. We select up to 6 a year, and we provide them with 18 months of in-depth tailored support with really anything that they need to help grow the impact of their project, reach new audiences and things like that. So across the board, all of our programs are tailored to provide organizations with support that they need across really any need that they have.
Again, thank you, Taylor. I appreciate all of your information and help with this project, and hopefully volunteers will join your project so we can get more information on this topic.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well. So we do have about 2 more minutes left, maybe a minute and a half. So if you want to take a short break before our next speaker, feel free to do so. And if our next speaker, who is Megan, is there, then hi, Megan.
Hello.
If you want to go ahead and upload your presentation and,
Sure.
and get it ready, we can do that. I can hear you nicely, so audio's good. Okay, it is coming up, and it looks like we have you ready to rock and roll.
Awesome.
There was a question from Anne Marie, and yes, the fair is being recorded. So master naturalists who have not been able to attend can still watch it. All right, we have about 1 minute left. I will say all this information about pollinators and plants is really so important. I remember going to kind of like an urban wildlife conference before it was really popular back in the mid 90s. So that was well over 28 years ago. And I remember Butterfly Talk was one session, and it was really visited by a lot of the individuals attending that conference, because nobody knew anything back in the 90s about butterflies. There were very little was known about butterflies, and so it was definitely a very hot topic. And here we are, still almost 30 years later, and we're still trying to get a lot of great information about not only the pollinators themselves, but also the plants that they rely on. So this is all great work that definitely needs to get done. So appreciate all the master naturalists who are going to be working on these projects. So it is 10:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started with Dr. Let's see, I'm so sorry. With Dr. Megan Clayton. She's a professor and extension range specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And with that, go ahead and get started, Megan.
Great. Thank you so much, Judith. Today, I'm very excited to present for y'all about a project that our unit is doing, the Rangeland Wildlife and Fisheries Extension Unit at Texas A&M University, the same department actually that Mary Pearl is in. We are excited to solicit for some volunteers for our Plants of Texas Rangelands project. And it kind of has two components now, which I'm excited to share with you about. We advertised this back in, I think, 2020, when y'all had this fantastic idea to do the virtual share fair. And it worked out really well for us. We had about 40 volunteers, and you can imagine as time goes on, a lot of those people get busy, life happens, and so we're ready to recruit a new group in addition to those who are still active on our volunteer list. And if you're out there, thank you, thank you. We appreciate all that you've done. I'll share a little bit about our successes as we go, but the Plants of Texas Rangelands is a virtual herbarium. So an herbarium used to be where people kept like a bunch of plants in like a really creepy room. But now you can go online and get the same information. And I'm really proud of this website that I, by the way, did not create. I wish I could take credit for that, but this was created when I first started an extension a long time ago, and it has about 400 plants on it. And we're really excited to be able to beef it up and make it a go-to resource for people in Texas looking for plant information. So if you go to rangeplants.tamu.edu, which I'll put that in the chat box, that is our website, and they are doing maintenance on the sites today. So I checked it a few minutes ago and it actually worked. But if something happens and it doesn't work out, try it again later because they are doing updates, most unfortunately today on the site. But again, it's got a really cool help me identify my plant button where you can go through and reduce the number of plants that you're looking at depending on different characteristics if you're lucky enough to have them, or even if they're a brush, a broadleaf weed, or a forb, or a grass species. We also have a common name index, a scientific name index, a map of the regions if you want to pick a region and only look at plants that are on there in your region. And we have 3 or 4 different books that are on there electronically. So instead of having to keep all these books on your bookshelf, you could also search the books and look at the information online. So in the common name index, it does not have a search box, which is something that our volunteers would like to add on. I need to work on that, but right now you would pick a letter and it would jut you down to the letter, but you can see we have a lot of different options. All of these are categorized by family, flower color, seed type, all kinds of information that's very helpful for understanding about the plant, but also for your searching purposes. So here's my example. It's going to be on antelope horn milkweed. I just like the plant because it's pretty cool. There's a little description about the plant, habitat. It talks about its toxic agents because this milkweed is toxic, and then signs of livestock ingestion. And this information we're getting directly out of our Toxic Plants of Texas book that's included in the website. What I super love about the plant, in addition to all these cool plant characteristics that it's sorted by, it gives different pictures of the plant, both the larger plant, up close plant parts that might help with identification, Really some beautiful work that was done here so that you can look at this plant in a number of different angles. Because even sometimes people bring a plant into me in the office and it just doesn't ring a bell. But if I saw it growing out in the field, I would probably recognize it right off. So a lot of different angles for the plants, very helpful. So what is there that you could do? Well, add to our list of about 400 plants in the database. You could add pictures to already existing plants that are in there. Some of them, most unfortunately, only have a sketch. But if you're lucky enough to be a walker or a hiker or somebody who really takes a lot of pictures, that would be a wonderful project for you. You could also add descriptions or edit the descriptions that are in there. I think Kelly Monday had worked on this project for a while and she got through a large percentage of the alphabet. So now we're working on those plants at the end of the alphabet by scientific name. So we're close to being edited for all of our plants. And that also gives us an idea of what plants we actually need more pictures for. And then we also have a wish list of plants we would like added to the site, some of the more common ones that we get questions about. And so you could sign up for these plants on Google Docs or add your favorite plants if you want to. It's really a very flexible project. You would submit a form and the plant photos just to my email address. We would get those uploaded. We have a fantastic volunteer, thank you, Bill, who does our website additions and edits. And then you can work from home or wherever you are. So even if you travel quite a bit, it's still possible that you could work a little bit on this when you're hanging out in a seat outside or at a desk inside. So lots of flexibility, lots of options. We would love to have you if it's something that you're interested in. We're adding plants for all the different ecoregions of Texas. So if you do travel, we would likely need plants from where you're going. And I think it just adds a little bit of more fun when you travel, that you have a purpose for taking some of those pictures, because likely we need them on our website. We're always looking for great shots. So what qualifications do you need? You must enjoy plants, because I don't want to torture you. But if you are a plant enthusiast or someone who has finally put together that all of those sexy wildlife species have to be supported by plant life in their habitats, then you qualify. Be willing to learn. You don't have to know everything to start out, and do minor research on a few plants, or as many as you would like. We usually just assign a few at a time, so it's not overwhelming. Be detail oriented. Make sure we have the right facts, because this information is going to a public resource that's used quite frequently. Have a decent camera to take photos. And I laugh when I say that, because some of you probably have cell phones that take better photos than my digital camera does. By having a nice camera definitely helps to get those, because we want good DPI when we put those on the website. And then attend a 1-hour training, which we have not set the date for yet. We'll kind of get all our volunteers to weigh in on when a good time is for them, to learn exactly what we need and how the process is going to work. If you still work full time, we could also have those in the evenings. That's not a problem. And we'll also record them for people that can't be there and still want to volunteer. To add on to this, I also have the pleasure of introducing to you something from Dr. Stacy Hines, who is our new extension specialist in the Corpus Christi Research and Extension Center. She kind of took my place after I moved over to the Uvalde Research and Extension Center last summer. She has a project she's calling the Texas Triple P. It is a sister project that is still in the developmental phases, but what she'd like to do is develop a new plant ID app kind of based on our website. So you would have it on the go, and develop some curriculum to teach plant ID first to coaches for the 4-H plants teams, and then expand that, of course, for other master naturalists and general citizens in our state. So we'd be developing a photo database of plants, just like we're doing on the website, across Texas counties in different growth stages. Of course, we want to see all those different plant parts, and then gathering photos of the key identifying characteristics of plants that help you to identify it, because sometimes saying that the seed head looks like a bottle brush is a lot better than some of the scientific descriptions that we might see in some of the books. So why it's important: plant identification is the first step into understanding why that plant might be there and what purpose it may have, or if it's a plant that's invasive and needs to be removed. Plant identification knowledge in Texas may be on the decline. We see that we have about 200 students who participated in the 4-H plant contest last year, which is a great number, but we would love to increase that. And I think empowering those coaches to feel like they could teach a team would be one way to get at that. And the Texas Triple P project provides developing a free app with first, she's going to go after the 129 plants that are on the 4-H list, but it's a really great diversity of some of the more common plants in our state, and then developing curriculum to teach people. She has some fantastic ideas and has a history, 6 years in fact, of doing online classwork. So I think that she's going to be a perfect person for this match on this project. So you can take photos and document their location, different seasons of the year. Sometimes we fail in range management on documenting those plant species when they're really tiny because they look very different than when they're larger. Take photos of key identifying characteristics and, of course, their lookalike species that people may get tripped up on. So our WFM Extension Plant Team volunteers who have the opportunity to work on the database and all the accompanying products that are going to come out of that database, they can assist with the important outreach that Texas A&M Extension does. As you know, as Texas Master Naturalist volunteers, you know what kind of impact that has on people. Provide scientific information for public use, refine your plant identification skills, or maybe develop a love for plants that you didn't know that you had. And of course, become a valued member of our team that we do really value because we are very low in numbers, as Mary Pearl can attest. And it's very helpful to have volunteers who can help us create projects that are much bigger than our capacity alone. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about these projects or anything that kind of left out.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that project information. There is one comment from Tina, and I agree wholeheartedly. She loves the fact that this database includes toxic agents and livestock reactions, which is very good information and a really good source for ag producers in our region. So
I
it is
agree,
important
Tina.
information.
Oh,
for sure.
she's in. All right. Yay, Tina.
Yes, and she's in.
Tina's my new best friend. I would like to also say that, you know, sometimes it's the reverse. So a lot of times people tell me that toxic plants are killing their livestock, and they are not to blame because the livestock usually learn to avoid those plants. And so that kind of saves us from having to remove plants unnecessarily. So the reverse can also be helpful when they look that up and they see that those characteristics are not matching what they're seeing in their livestock. That's very helpful as well.
Great. Let's see, any other questions? And I, oh, she apparently also has a great database of photos for you.
Yay! We are always looking for good photos, and I would say master naturalists are the top people in being able to take photos at the right times to get those shots that really help people to identify their plant.
And I apologize, I did have to step away for a call during your presentation for a snippet, so I don't know if you actually mentioned this or not, but one question I had was, are there certain plants that the project focuses on as far as growth habits? You know, are you looking only at forbs? Are you looking at shrubs, trees?
We have everything in there. We have vines. What we've started with on that database, or what I should say they started with when our past unit leader, Charlie Hart, had this site started, they were looking to mostly cover those plants that we got a lot of questions about. So that's where we started first. But it's expanded well beyond that thanks to our Master Naturalist volunteers. And I love that we're cleaning it up because, as you know, plant people are weird and they change plant names regularly. So we don't want to ever be behind the times, and it's hard for us to keep up on things. So we're very thankful to have other sets of eyes, making sure that our database is scientifically factual and is up to date with the latest information.
Very good. Well, thank you again, Megan. I don't see any other questions. We appreciate your time this morning.
Great. Thanks, y'all.
And Erika, I see that you're on. If you'd like to go ahead and upload your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can hear you nicely, so your audio is doing well.
Very good. Let me share my screen. Wait for all this to move. Okay.
You're not in presentation mode yet.
All right. Let me go to slideshow from beginning. All right, are we ready to go?
Not yet. We're gonna, oh, yes, we are. So it's 10:30. Erika Sullivan, master student with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, is going to present on woody plant encroachment in grasslands, teaching by wrapping. I like that title. So you'll have to explain.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, good morning. Yep, my name's Erika Sullivan. If you're interested in knowing, my advisor is actually Dr. Morgan Treadwell, extension specialist out of San Angelo. And I work with the Prairie Project, and we're a nonprofit very focused on the promotion of prescribed fire, high-risk herbivory, and multi-species grazing, because woody plant encroachment is a significant issue affecting our rangelands. And so, we are getting involved with educators, bringing in new curriculum to teach about these different management topics, as well as extension agents hosting workshops where we teach about these different topics and also include curriculum that teaches about the rangeland analysis platform. And so a little bit about the project. So yeah, new technology applications such as the rangeland analysis platform. We call it RAP for short, so it's not exactly wrapping. It's this new free and online tool, and it has been created to help assist in the managing and monitoring of America's rangelands in efforts to target the seedling stage of woody species. And so what I've done, and this is part of my master's research within the Prairie Project, we've developed this step-by-step curriculum to show how to utilize this platform to evaluate plant encroachment occurring here in Texas, and the efficiency of using these different techniques of multi-species grazing, planned fire, and high-risk herbivory across different demonstration ranches out in West Texas. So we're actually working with ranchers in West Texas who implement these different practices. And with this curriculum, you are collecting data on these different ranches and seeing just how those management practices affect the land. And so we are looking for Texas Master Naturalist volunteers to complete this curriculum while also completing knowledge assessments at the same time, and offering me some really good feedback on these course materials that I'm providing for you. This is going to be a curriculum that will eventually be used by future educators, future extension agents, and so your feedback is crucial to making this curriculum as efficient as it can be. So I have here, project expectations. I put on here virtual distance. So right now, this is a virtual option. So you'll go through a virtual training. And then what's expected out of that, you'll complete this curriculum on your own, and then you'll be given the opportunity to actually go out to the same ranch that you collected data on with the Rangeland Analysis Platform in West Texas and be able to interact with the rancher, hear with him on these different management techniques, how it benefits him. And some of the other stuff that we'll be doing. So you'll be giving we'll be giving a presentation to you on these different climate smart management practices of fire, of grazing, of high-risk herbivory, as well as how to complete the RAP curriculum. So you're not just going in cold turkey. You'll be able to have some knowledge before going in. And we'll also, I'm going to create a shared drive for y'all that, just in case you do get stuck on this curriculum, there are videos available to help kind of guide you through this curriculum or where you're stuck at. And so, yep, you'll complete the Rangeland Analysis Platform curriculum as well as the knowledge assessments. And then overall, you'll be able to kind of discuss the implications of using these different management techniques as management tools. So logistics I put on here, 50 to 100 participants. Honestly, the more participants, the better. If we get more participants, I will plan on hosting actually some of these workshops in person, either here in College Station or out in San Angelo, Texas. So please sign up. And so we'll have multiple virtual opportunities, as well as, potentially distance-based sessions between the months of May and September. I'm hoping, as soon as we get that list of participants, we'll have our first virtual training towards the end of this month. And this will be about a 3 to 5 hour total time commitment. All virtual volunteers. This will be more self-paced. So once you get through that PowerPoint, training how to complete the curriculum, you'll have until, let's say, about August, September to get this done. And all distance volunteers, if you attend that one, will complete that curriculum at the end of the workshop. So not quite self-paced on that one. Just we'll be sitting down, getting it done. And then volunteers will, of course, have the chance to attend a ranch tour in the fall, and we're probably projecting that to be in August. Okay, so project experience, equipment, advanced training. So if you're doing this virtually, you're going to need a good computer, Wi-Fi, Excel. But other than that, there's no advanced training needed. This curriculum is very step-by-step. I've completed this with high schoolers, with college students, and then they were able to complete it just fine. So I think that you should have no issue getting this done. Okay, and kind of getting more into the benefits for you. So for one, learning more about the techniques of prescribed fire, multi-species grazing, and pyrocharbivory, how these impact vegetation. And then also learn how to use the rangeland analysis platform. In addition to just collecting collecting data on ranches in West Texas, you'll be able to use this platform for your own properties. So if you do any kind of management practices and you're curious to see what kind of impact that's having on your different land cover vegetation types, this platform is great for that. Another thing, help provide commentary and feedback on a curriculum that will be used in the future by educators, or if you're an educator yourself, this is potential new curriculum for you to use in your classrooms. It's expected to come out as a fact sheet, and so signing up for this, well, now you're already getting that background knowledge, and you can start thinking about how you want to implement this in your own classroom. Potential ranch tour in the fall. Come out to West Texas. We would love to have you there. Get to interact with some of our ranchers. They're really passionate about the type of stuff that they're doing. We'll make sure we'll have a good time with it. Also, help a master student. So, I would appreciate all the help that I can get. Your data, these surveys that you're completing, this is all data to go into my thesis in the future. And so I would greatly appreciate y'all coming onto this project. Okay, so I know I kind of went a little bit fast, a little bit excited here today, but this is my contact information. And I also put on here the Prairie Project website, where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're always sharing the latest science when it comes to woody plant encroachment, fire, and grazing. And then our website, who we're partnered up with, who we're currently working with. You can see the type of projects that teachers have going on in their classrooms currently. And so, yeah, I think that's all I have for y'all. Thank you so much. Just let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Erika. Really appreciate your time again today, as with all the speakers. I am curious, can you give us an example of, I guess, maybe a little bit more detailed information about what kind of exact information you might be wanting?
Exact information, you mean from the volunteers themselves, or
like you said that landowners could use this as a resource to kind of share what their, I guess, impacts or results that they're seeing on the ground. I guess how could they share that information? Like some of our master naturalists have indicated that they have several acreages or several acres that they themselves own, and I was just wondering, is that something that they could also somehow, and again, I don't know if that would be, that probably would not count as volunteer hours, but just to share their information, their experiences on their own land with woody encroachment on areas that they're trying to maintain as a grassland, for instance.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to answer your question here. So how they're going to be able to share, essentially, the data?
How, but well, I guess what kind of information would they be sharing?
Okay. Oh, yeah. So, once they actually, use the rangeland analysis platform, download the data from the ranch, so they'll be sharing information on, how perennial foreign grass cover has changed, how tree cover has changed, or maybe even how bare ground has changed. But let's say these guys are running any sort of livestock on their property. They can also check out, what their biomass is looking like. So, how much pounds per acre that they have on their land, what their current stocking rate is, and also what their historical stocking rate was. So just kind of that information, how these different, vegetative cover types has changed over time, so they can really see the impacts of these different management practices that they've been implementing. Maybe this could be information that, they keep for themselves, or I guess they could share it, with other people, be like, I've been doing deferred grazing for who knows how long, and this is the impacts of doing this kind of grazing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any other questions. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm up to speed. Nope, I don't see anything else. So, Erika, thank you so much for your time today, as always. And at this point, we do have about 5 minutes. So if volunteers need to take a quick break, now would be a great time to do that.
And good luck, Erika, with your master's project.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
While we're on break, there was a question in the chat about the SurveyMonkey. That SurveyMonkey link will be active until May 24th. I believe that was the date that we said earlier. Yes, May 24th. Until that point, you can fill that form out. It will collate your responses, so you can fill it out once today and once tomorrow, or after watching the recording, fill it out. And then those responses will be formatted and tabulated and shared with the project hosts after that that survey is closed.
I see your notation about the cows on your land love the twistleaf yuccas, and there's not that many of them. They're endemic to the hill country, so that's unfortunate that they were loving it, but I didn't realize that. So that's interesting information. Liz, thanks for sharing. And we still have about 4 minutes left. So if you need to take a break, or if you would like to grab something to drink before we finish with our last speaker for this morning, then feel free to do so. And we will start at 10:45. And Rachel, I see that you're on. So if you'd like to go ahead and upload your presentation, feel free to do that. And you can also just unmute yourself just to make sure we can do a quick audio check that we can hear you. Okay, your presentation is uploaded. I can see it.
Okay.
And I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Awesome. We have about 3 more minutes.
Okay.
David, I see you asked in the chat where the SurveyMonkey link will be found, and it is currently in the chat. If you, I believe if you have to scroll up a little bit, and maybe Mary Pearl can repost it one more time. But it's just a little bit above you at the 10:29 mark. I believe, yes, 10:29. You can just click on that link. And it's been reposted, I see. Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So we have about a minute. So if you can hear me and you're in the kitchen, come on back. Well, that is like one of the longest minutes. When you need time, you never get it. And then and then when you wait around for it, it takes forever. How's that? All right. I see it's 10:45, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our next speaker, Rachel Lange, who is the Habitat Assessment Biologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today. And whenever you're ready, feel free to get started.
Okay, glad to be here. As Judith mentioned, I'm with the Parks and Wildlife program. We review development projects of all kinds. There are a few of us scattered throughout the state. I have the southeastern quadrant, including Houston, and then up to Jefferson County, across to Bastrop County, and then south. So as you'll see later, offshore wind is first going to come into my area. And my screen, oh, there we go, okay. So this is a knowledge review. We need to know the state of things for a suite of focal species that we anticipate will be impacted by offshore wind. There's great interest in developing that energy source in the Gulf of Mexico now. There are lease blocks defined, and despite our knowing that the Gulf is a very important area ecologically, there's not a lot of information we can leverage right now to predict impacts of offshore wind. So what we're looking for are volunteers to help us search for peer-reviewed literature to help better understand what those impacts might be and what actions may need to be taken. And for this exercise, we'll be looking at volant wildlife, so birds and bats. And there's a picture of a black tern and a silver-haired bat there. There are a couple of species we're interested in. And to orient you to the site, these are the lease blocks that are currently proposed. There's that lighter blue turquoise type color is just south of Lake Charles. And then the larger one is south of Galveston. And as noted, they've taken out some blocks due to the shrimp industry. And these are the focal species that we have chosen to look at right now. So this was input from me, my colleague in our program, Russell, who reviews the valley and the lower coastal area of Texas, Tanya Hamuyan, the state ornithologist, and Nate Fuller, our bat biologist for the state. So we put our heads together and came up with these: northern gannet, black tern, golden winged warbler, yellow-billed cuckoo, bank swallow, common nighthawk, prothonotary warbler, who's right up there, Hudsonian godwit. We have a picture of that one on the right, hoary bat, silver-haired bat, southern yellow bat, and eastern red bat, who's the little bat there on the slide. And of course, there are many more species that are utilizing the Gulf, and these are the ones that we really want to focus on to try to paint a broader picture. To give you an idea of the structures that we're looking at out in the Gulf, this is trying to show the scale of just how large these structures are. And as time goes on, the structures are getting larger, they're more efficient at harnessing and producing energy. So that's just the trend of these things getting larger and larger and larger through time. And that illustrates the point right there. And so this one is really telling for how huge these things are getting. The rotor swept zone are it's immense, 7 American football fields. So those are the areas that wildlife are having to navigate potentially. So the expectations, we want to develop a repository of literature to, again, let us know the state of things for all of these species, both in terms of their general natural history, important breeding grounds, pressures they're facing, and then also wind-centric information if that is available. And we want this repository to be a tool for myself, Russell, anybody who's reviewing these projects and offering agency comment during the National Environmental Policy Act process that these developers will go through. We want it to be available to conservation partners, whether that's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or a non-governmental organization such as Audubon. We just want it to be there and available. And then future researchers who can use it as a springboard to identify knowledge gaps and go from there. Logistics, we're thinking that we could accommodate 5 to 15 volunteers. We only want people to focus on one species at a time, just to help things stay organized and manageable for everyone. You can conduct this volunteer work at your home, at a coffee shop, a library, anywhere that you have reliable internet access is probably fine to work on this. Just to keep good progress going and for volunteers to remember what they've looked at already, what they've compiled. I think ideally once or twice a week, just to keep it fresh in your mind, would be great. The time required is going to depend on how much literature is out there for each species. So poorly studied species, it may not take you very long to find what's out there. Others, you may have more papers to go through. We'll take as many hours as you want to share with us. If you finish a species and want to move on to another one, that would be great if there's still species left to look at. 100% flexible. If you have insomnia and you want to work on this at 2 in the morning, that's fine. We'd like to get the repository established within less than a year, just because of the speed at which these developments are moving. So we want to have this knowledge available by the time leases are being sold and the Gulf and projects, individual projects might be being developed. And then the timeline will be influenced, of course, by how many folks are helping with this effort. Again, all you need really is a dependable internet connection and a computer or a tablet. I think a phone might be a little too small to really be comfortable for extended periods working on this. Email address that you utilize and you check it regularly. You know how to use a search engine. And then just good organization and communication skills. I will train any interested volunteers. I'm thinking it'll be about 30 minutes just to go through the guidelines of what we're looking for, and then open it up for Q&A. And there will be 2 of us, myself and Tanya, as your points of contact to field any questions, help you with difficulties. And then if folks are interested, I would be glad to set up a group check-in just to kind of connect with each other and see how things are going. The benefits for you, here's my sales pitch. So this is a way to meaningfully engage with the existing science and pass that on to where it goes to technical guidance in the field, influencing how developers build their projects and operate their projects in the Gulf. You can expect to learn more in-depth information about whatever species you're researching. And going back to what I said earlier, this directly links to the Texas Master Naturalist mission by having a positive influence on management of natural communities. And you're doing that through facilitating the process by which development impacts are minimized during build out of offshore wind. And then just, it's a big effort. It's going to take a lot of people to amalgamate all this information that exists out there. So it's a team lift, and it would be just great to see people come together and help out with this effort. And then here's my contact information and Tanya's contact information if you want to reach out to us.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but there's a little bit of audio, somehow interference of some kind, but overall I could hear everything. So hopefully everybody else could hear you as well. So it was just towards the tail end.
I don't know. I apologize for that, but
no worries.
The catalog
I heard you.
was mentioned, it's all there. So.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. Are there, Joyce was just asking, are there sources for search? Are sources for search all public?
So
oh, we just lost your audio. We're losing your audio now all of a sudden. There's like a high-pitched noise. Can you just check to make sure you're plugged in properly with your headphones, maybe? Make sure it didn't disconnect somehow.
Let's see here.
Okay, I think I got you back. Go ahead and say something.
Is this better?
Yes, it is.
I don't know what's going on.
Lean in.
Lean in.
Go with
my
it.
Headphones work. You'll find peer-reviewed literature online. Typically, you can access what we need you to get, the citation information and the abstract. I will say that if anyone is really interested in a particular paper, it's very successful to email the author. They will send you a. I checked into sharing access to our library subscriptions through the agency. We unfortunately cannot do that with external partners. But like I said, if you have a paper you want to dig into and read, email that author and they're always happy to send it to you.
Thank you. And Lisa was just making a comment that this is super important work. She can't believe that they are locating these structures in major flyways, or that they're, I guess, in other words, building them in major flyways.
Yes, it's pretty nuts.
And then Francis was just curious if any aquatic species are going to be added in the future, maybe.
We considered that, and our partners in coastal fisheries divisions, they expect to have some of their summer interns work on the marine side of things. But depending on how that goes, we may need to step in and help with your time. And if they request that, then we'll.
Sounds like you said that y'all would consider doing that. Your audio checked out right at the tail end of your answer.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's see. We are pretty much at time, close to time. So thank you so much, Megan, for joining us this morning and sharing. I'm sorry, Rachel, for joining us and sharing your project with us. It definitely is a very important one for sure, especially with all of these wind turbines being popped up everywhere. So good information to have. And with that, I will pass it over to Michelle and Mary Pearl. And again, thank you all for joining us this morning for the 7 presentations on the various projects. And we will also have more tomorrow. But Mary Pearl and Mary Pearl and Michelle will conclude today's virtual volunteer fair here in starting now.
Yeah, thank you, Judith, and thank you to all of our project hosts and to all of our volunteers who joined us as we opened up today's virtual volunteer fair. This is a unique program that came out of the COVID timeline, but something that we've kept around. You can see that we've got projects that are returning to us, like those at Britt and Megan with the Texas Range Plant website. These are opportunities for us to engage with those partners that still need volunteers in a way that are distance, virtual based, and can be done on your own time and your own schedule. So we're excited to continue with the virtual volunteer fair as requested by our master naturalists this year. And so happy to have these project hosts engaging with y'all in new and unique ways. We have a full lineup of speakers tomorrow as well. We'll get started at 9 a.m. with our intro, and then Judith will MC us through our 15-minute time blocks all morning tomorrow morning, and then wrap up in the same way. So again, excited and happy to have everybody here, and thank you guys. Some questions, and I'm going to jump slides to the Survey Monkey. Some questions about the virtual volunteer fair. A lot of our information is on our website, so if you have not visited the virtual volunteer fair website, please do. A lot of those questions that you guys have about the recording, the agenda, the Survey Monkey, the VMS guide, all of those are cataloged on this virtual volunteer fair page. And I'll drop that link in the chat again, just so that everybody has it at the ready. But if not, it's on our txmn.tamu.edu page, and then clicking on Naturalist News, it's the second one down from there. And that's also where we will post the recordings once today's recording is done, and then once tomorrow's recording is done, they'll be posted on that same page as well. That catalog of projects that we referred to a few times is there, as well as the Survey Monkey link that has now been updated on the website. So you can, if you've lost that Survey Monkey link, you can find it on our virtual volunteer fair page. A few questions that have been asked about how the Survey Monkey works. You can sign up today for projects that were presented today. You can wait until tomorrow after you see tomorrow's projects, decide which ones work best for you. And you can either sign up through the Survey Monkey multiple times or all at once at the end of tomorrow's presentations. Again, those that Survey Monkey link will be active until May 24th, after which we will close that link and pull those reports to send to project hosts. It's then in the hands of the project host to engage with you as volunteers for their projects and contact you on their next steps for the projects that you have signed up for. Oh, I also recognize that there is an incorrect date on the Survey Monkey, so we're getting that fixed tonight. So just bear with us. Michelle, do you want to address any other questions that came out of the chat from How to Log for VMS?
All of the resources are there. We've shared the resources in the chat, and the resources are all on our website. We've addressed them earlier today. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, thanks, y'all.
I'm going to show our agenda for tomorrow while we have everybody, if they want to come back.
Yes, ma'am. Here is tomorrow's agenda.
You may want to mention real quick before everybody signs off. You said that the latter part of tomorrow's is going to be more ecoregion focused. Is that correct?
Yes, the last 3 sessions tomorrow are ecoregion specific or site-based projects. So they have specific sites where those projects are being hosted, or they are limited in the master naturalists that can get involved with them. Those outlines are on the catalog of projects, and then they're also on the survey as well, so that you will know if you, as a chapter member of this chapter or that chapter, can sign up for those projects. But the reason why we kept those 3 projects on our state virtual volunteer fair is these are some really great ideas for ways to engage with partners in your areas and mimic some of these project ideas with your ecoregion specific conservation groups. So think about those types of methods when you're looking at projects that may not be as applicable, or you may not be able to volunteer with directly. It might be an opportunity to drum up a new partner organization, a new partner project in your area. Yeah, great. Thank you for reminding me about that, Judith. All right. And with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.